All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our preview and prediction for the Interim Coach Bowl, also known as the Fenway Bowl. Cincinnati and Louisville, Cardinal 2-point favorites. December 16th on Saturday at 11 a.m. on ESPN, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts. The two old Big East rivals, 30-22 all-time record in favor of Cincinnati. They last met in 2013. Looking at the Cincinnati offense, Nick, I'm not sure he's going to get the start at quarterback. Ben Bryant, he was injured. Evan Prater got the start against Tulane in a must-win to get to the conference championship game. Was unable to deliver. He really struggled in that game. He's still a very young player, so I do expect Bryant to get the start here if he can get the go. Great size, 6'3", 220, 2,700 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 picks, completed 61% of his passes this year. Very inconsistent quarterback, but Ben Bryant, he went to Eastern Michigan for a year, got some great experience, came back. I think he did a pretty good job of leading this offense. Just struggled to run the ball this year. 136 yards per contest. Charles McClellan, a solid season. 6 yards per touch, 7 touchdowns, 834 yards. Corey Kenner and Ryan Montgomery, though, good yards per carry number, but they certainly did not really live up to the expectations. This backfield, I think, had some big ones coming into the year, and they didn't really perform the best.
Right, this running back core, they definitely struggled at times. It's a new era for Cincinnati. Luke Fickell obviously takes the job at Wisconsin. This is a team that was in the playoff last year. High expectations coming into the season. I think they actually played pretty well, keeping it close against Arkansas week 1. I do like Charles McClellan. The numbers aren't great, but they're also good if you look at them. 6 yards per carry is a solid thing to have. 7 touchdowns for him, 834 yards on the ground. But this running game just wasn't really quite where they had hoped it would be. They needed to see more production out of this team if they wanted to pick up those yards. When you look at the rushing yards, 136 yards per game on the ground is really not what this team expected, and it's really a low number for this team considering what they're able to produce in the past.
Fired on Ben Bryant a whole lot more, and look at this passing game,
which is something that we did not expect in the preseason.
Looking at Joe Huber, you're leading the way at tackle. He's had a phenomenal year. James Tunstall, another veteran. And of course, Jake Renfro went down early on in the year. This offensive line certainly did not really perform to expectations either. I do love the 2 pass catchers they have in Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker. Plenty of speed in the receiving core. Scott, banging on the door of 900 yards, 9 touchdowns. Jaden Thompson as well, 383 from him. And then Josh Wiley, 32 receptions from his tight end position. And then Leonard Taylor is also a pretty impressive tight end as well. Top to bottom, pretty solid offense. I do think the offensive line, of course, struggled. Again, the running game struggled. 31 points per game, though. I think they just have a little bit of enough balance to get by this year. And I think that's what this offense certainly leaned on, despite some inconsistencies. But again, they did not look great against Tulane. And now Luke Fickell's gone. Some post-Fickell jitters might be in effect for this offense, despite having veteran receivers, veteran backs, and a veteran quarterback. But, they've been held to under 400 yards since the 22nd of October, Nick. That's 6 games in a row we're looking at where they couldn't find much on offense. I don't expect much to change here.
There is some good veteran leadership on this team. I do like Scott, and I do like Tucker as well. Scott nearly 900 yards receiving, the 9 scores for him. But like you said, they haven't really struggled under 400 yards in their last 6 contests. They really seem to have been kind of figured out at this point in the season. These teams that they're playing against, Tulane figured them out a little bit. They beat Temple, but it wasn't really that pretty. ECU as well squeaked by them. Navy, another team that they really probably shouldn't have been beating by a whole lot more, considering now Navy just really isn't that good of a team. The talent is here certainly on offense, but I think they're just kind of disappointed this season. They really haven't lived up to the expectations they had, considering they were high-flying offense last year. And it leaves a lot of question marks for the future of this program under their new coach, who, of course, is the former Louisville coach.
Looking at a Louisville offense that was very interesting this year. A lot of talent, but they certainly did not perform the way we expected either. This football team is really carried by a great defense. 27 points per game for this football team. The balance was not really there. 211 passing yards per game. Malik Cunningham battled some health towards the end of the year, but he was not great as a passer anyways. 157 yards per game for him. Completed only 62%, 8 touchdowns, 5 picks. Only ran for 565 yards. He did have 12 touchdowns. But I was expecting him to be, an underrated Heisman candidate, especially, since he had 4,000 yards a season ago, 40 touchdowns. Nowhere near that this year, Nick. It was very odd to see. Now you look at a backfield that's down 3 guys. Tyon Evans to the NFL. Cooley's transferring, as is Jalen Mitchell. Jawar Jordan, though, he's been the lead back for a number of weeks now. 700 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.5 yards per touch. 11 attempts per game. I expect him to get, probably upwards, of 20 in this contest. This offense, though, had a lot of speed in their backfield. 194 yards per game on the ground. It's a pretty good number, but they certainly did not live up to expectations running the ball. And then you look at the receiving core. Marshawn Ford at tight end, one of my favorite in the country, 31 receptions, 420 yards. Then Tyler Hudson, who is the lone star of this receiving group, 69 grabs, 1,034 yards. I mean, this offense had a good bit of talent in it coming into the year, but I don't think they lived up to expectations one bit.
It certainly is difficult for your offense when your quarterback, had 40 all-purpose touchdowns the year before, and you have that to 20, right? That's a disappointing drop-off from Lee Cunningham, a guy, a lot of love in the preseason, Heisman sleeper, could have been there, certainly considering the potential with the production he put up last year. Of course, we saw a former Louisville running quarterback win the Heisman in the past, so it's been done before. A lot of people were talking about it in the preseason. Just did not work out this way. I think the tone was set week 1 against Syracuse, where the offense scored 7 points, came out, looked totally flat. Cunningham, just not a great season for him overall. 1,500 yards passing, 8 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Not a great ratio at all for him. Yes, 12 scores on the ground, but you expected more than 12 scores for him. Really, you wanted to see more. Jordan at running back, leading the way, 700 yards for him, 5.3 yards per carry.
Power back, I like that. You pick up a decent amount of
yards per touch, but just really has not been fully what you would hoped out of this running game. Tyler Hudson is a star, right? 1,000 yards receiving, 15 yards per catch, 2 scores for him, but there wasn't a whole lot of offensive touchdowns through the air because Cunningham just seemed to not be able to get the passes where they needed to be in the red zone. This offense really struggled to complete drives, which is really disappointing considering how talented they were in the preseason. A lot of expectations that I had for this team, a ton of points. It really just did not live up to those expectations.
Bryce Hudson in the middle at center is going to lead a mid-tier offensive line against the Cincinnati defense that, for the most part, this year's played very well. 20 points per game allowed, under 330 yards per contest, but they kind of collapsed against Tulane. 221 rushing yards to Tajay Spears in that ground attack. They performed very well against the pass though, and they have all year long. I think they've taken a sizable step back, but that was kind of expected when they lost 3 guys to the NFL. 186 passing yards per game allowed. That was a phenomenal number. That's not the matchup we're going to look for though. Tyler Hudson obviously out there. Javon Hicks, he's had a great year. He's a stud in coverage. Arquan Bush might draw the duties of covering Hudson. This is a pretty good defense in the front 6, though. Dante Corleone, Jawan Briggs, some really good run stuffers. Ivan Pace, coming over from Miami of Ohio, playing with his brother Deshaun. 120 tackles, 19.5 TFL, 9 sacks. Absolutely absurd numbers. This is a team that's very good against the pass. They always have been. But I'm more focused on that matchup against this run defense, Nick, and I think the 3-3-5 has certainly done them a disadvantage, over the past couple of years. But I think they do a pretty good job of stopping the run for this scheme. But I think here, especially with how they played against the Green Wave, I think Louisville might have a pretty sizable edge on the ground.
Louisville certainly do have a big edge on the ground. This front 7 really kind of has struggled against, or front 6 has struggled against the run so far this year. These guys really are not really kind of stuffing the holes they need to. Jabari Taylor's guy, look at, 3.5 sacks for him, 36 total tackles. I want to see more out of him on the defensive line. Jawan Briggs as well, having a good season in terms of tackles, 57 total tackles for him, plus the 3 sacks. But these guys have been getting beat on the ground. We saw it against Tulane, rushing all over them, picking up a ton of ground game. It's not fantastic for this defense. You want to see better. Give up 142 yards per game on the ground. You want to see a bit of a less production from that. I like Ivan Pace a lot. Great numbers jumping off the stat sheet. 119 total tackles, 9 sacks, 4 pass breakups. Great year for him, kind of leading the way on this defense. Trayvon Volson as well. He's a good linebacker. Jamian Thomas as well. He's another solid linebacker. So the linebacking core is good here, but they just struggle against the run a little bit. They can get after the quarterback. But I think Louisville is going to find a lot of success on the ground due to the fact that this front 6 just really hasn't kind of lived up to that expectation to be able to stop the run.
Now look at the Louisville defense that's performed very well this year. We're very excited for this unit coming into the year, especially with all the veteran leadership they had at linebacker collectively as a group. A lot of football and played there. But, some of the numbers this year, they held Pittsburgh to 10, 17 against Virginia, and 6 rushing yards in that one. Forced, 8 turnovers against Wake Forest. They were on the field for 90 plays, held them to 402 yards. That is absurd. They also gave up only 291 to NC State. Not really a great offense, but that's certainly, that was a game Cunningham was very hobbled in. And then against Kentucky, Cunningham did not play, and they only gave up 346 to an offense that can certainly hurt you in a variety of different ways. In Kentucky, this is a defense, Nick, that has performed absolutely well. Yabzir Abdullah, 13 tackles for loss, 57 tackles, 8 sacks. He's been all over the place for them. He's also been exceptional in coverage when they drop him back. There's nothing he cannot do, top to bottom. It's just a phenomenal unit. I love the middle of their defense. Mohamed Sanago coming over from Ole Miss. He's had a heck of a season. Yaya Diaby on the defensive line, 11 tackles for loss for him. Monty Montgomery, another veteran linebacker, has got 9.5 tackles for loss. They're very stacked, I think, with talent and penetration this year was much better. 43 sacks for Louisville. That is a phenomenal number, getting great rotational help from their defensive line and their linebacker. Scott Satterfield departs, but I think he did a great job with his defense. Catrell Clark has been a big liability in the secondary. I don't think the back end's exactly been a strength for them, despite 206 pass yards per game. They've really just been playing, a strong brand of football collectively. 15 interceptions, 13 fumbles. That's third in FBS and takeaways. Again, Satterfield departs, but man, he did a heck of a job with his defense, because coming into the year was very much a question mark at a certain spot of positions, and man, they performed very well.
You and I had hoped that this defense would break out. We said during our preview for this Louisville team, we expected this defense potentially to break out. We liked the talent they had, but we had a lot of question marks whether or not these guys would step up to the plate. And honestly, they lived up to the expectations that I had for this potential with this defense. Yaya Diabayi, fantastic numbers for him, 7.5 sacks, 33 total tackles, defensive line. Love the production out of him. Sango as well, great tackler, 86 total tackles, 3.5 sacks for him. Montgomery, 62 total tackles, plus the 5 sacks. Abdullah, 57 total tackles, 8 sacks. They get after the quarterback, forced turnovers. 8 turnovers against Wake was certainly impressive. Ashton Gillette as well, 22 total tackles, 6 sacks for him. Production on the defensive line. They rotate these guys in and out. They have great depth on the defensive line. They have a bunch of different guys that can kind of play in that front seven. I love the way they can kind of swap talent in and out. Yes, the secondary has been suspect at times. Looking at Clark, looking at Minkins as well. These guys kind of get lost occasionally in the defensive back. I like this defense. They can hold teams. They can contain the game if they need to. Bend don't break type of defense, which is what I really like out of this team. They really kind of produce that bend don't break sort of mentality. You saw it against Wake. You saw it against JMU. You saw it against NC State. Even to a degree, you saw it against Clemson, even though they lost them. There were times where they were really.
I like this Louisville defense. I think they're a fantastic unit.
It's come a long way since last season. And Scott Satterfield built a great defense here. And it's interesting to see how he kind of transitions that when he takes over Cincinnati.
Jarvis Brownlee, 11 pass breakups. And then Quincy Riley with 3 interceptions. They certainly have a fair share of ball hogs consistent. There's going to be a lot of speed for Cincinnati going to be testing them, so it'll be a fun matchup to watch. Keys to the game, for Cincinnati, any post-Fickle jitters, I would say, and coming off a loss to Tulane in a tough game. I guess you can now say the same thing for Louisville, especially since your head coach is making kind of a lateral move to the opponent on the sideline. I think utilize that speed downfield to receiver, especially with how at times the Cincinnati or Louisville secondary has struggled. I think getting Tyler Scott, Trey Tucker involved is certainly going to be a big part of their offense. Louisville attack downhill with a running game, play good up front on the D-line. I think they'll do exactly that. I'm going to take 30-17 Louisville. I did have them scoring a little bit more points. Now Satterfield departs. I'm not sure how much that'll affect this team, but I think Cunningham, Jordan, they're going to have a big day on the ground. I think this defense is going to play with some extra heat now that their head coach is leaving. I'm going to take Louisville, especially with how Cincinnati played last week. Could totally be wrong on this one. I'm pretty confident the Cardinals will get this one done.
I'm taking Louisville. I'm feeling pretty confident as well. This is an interesting matchup. Fenway Bowl, playing at the Great American Ballpark, historic ballpark, certainly, fantastic stadium. Went there for the first time this summer. Is it the best stadium for a football game? I don't really think so, but it definitely is interesting. Kind of adds some flair to the bowl season. I like this matchup. Former Big East rivals, especially now a whole added layer with the coach moving. I think it is a lateral move. I agree with you on that comment, but I like Louisville here. I just think the talent on offense. They want to get a big win. They want to show their coach that leaves, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have left here. We were building something. And certainly this is a weird move for me because Louisville was building something. This recruiting class they have coming in is fantastic. 5-star running back, absolute talented. Get back out of Texas. They landed. Will he stay? Is he going to flip his commitment? There's a whole lot of question marks now with Louisville. I thought they were building something. We were looking at this in the preseason as a program that could maybe be contending in the ACC in 2 to 3 years under Scott Satterfield. Now he kind of throws it all away and takes the Cincinnati job.
It has a lot of long-term implications and short-term. I think
Louisville do win, though, but this one is one to watch kind of how it all unfolds with these two programs in the next 5 years.
Come here for today's episode, guys. As always, Nick, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited for this matchup.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.